with whatever.
Hey
Dr.
everyone.
Jeremy, how's
Oh,
it going? Chris.
have at it, man.
Chris said he wasn't gonna introduce. Wait, okay, go. Have at it, man. I was gonna say Dr. Jeremy, rise 25, rise up together, as opposed to rising up individually. Because that'd be foolish. But Dr. Jeremy, what's going on with you, man? What is behind you? Can you explain this? Thank
No, thanks for having me.
you so much.
Well, it's funny because we did an event actually in San Diego,
Ah,
and it was just an entrepreneur CEO event, and we had these made. We did several events there, maybe three, and it's actually less expensive to just get new banners every time than to ship them. So
that's
every
Really?
time,
true. That's
Is that
yeah,
true.
true?
That's true.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So every time we did an event, we got a couple banners. And so like I have a couple, my business partner has a couple, and I was like, hey, it'd probably look cool if we just throw it up. I have one at home, so I'll throw it up. It looks
That's
professional.
awesome, man.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
um
What
Yeah,
was
you
that
need.
conference about? Okay, entrepreneurship?
we went to one of the events we went to was traffic and conversion. I don't know if you guys have ever been. I
I
think
haven't been to
at the
that, but
time it attracts thousands of people. I don't know how many people sign up for the event, but it just all the people come to hang out. So there may be like 5, 6,000 people. And then we just like to get together with our friends who are also entrepreneurs. So we did kind of like a half a day the day before, just talking about our business challenges. And then we would do like kind of like a VIP reception where we just have food, drinks, and that kind of thing. So
man, me and Chris are entrepreneurs. We didn't get invited. What's going on?
if I knew you, you'd be invited.
Next time, are you in
Yeah,
Chicago?
I'm in Chicago. Yep.
We're gonna be there
Yeah.
in next month.
Why? Where are you gonna be?
Some private equity stuff that
Okay.
hopefully comes true. But if
Well,
not, it's a good trip to Chicago.
you'll let me know. Maybe we'll meet
Okay.
up.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be at the I don't know if there's only one, but at the Four Seasons, I'm assuming downtown.
Yep, I know where exactly where that is.
Okay. All right.
The fancy one. I got it.
Hey man, they pay for it. We don't ask questions. Actually, the only one foolish enough to ask questions is Chris. He doesn't go with the flow. He's got to ask questions.
I
Hey, I want to know
remember
what's up. What's up with that?
it's funny you say that just because we were running a podcast for an e-commerce conference, and I was trying to treat their business like mine. So when it came to the hotel, I basically, our staff, we doubled up. Like we didn't get
Mm.
individual rooms. We roomed two people to a room, and I didn't get a super expensive hotel. And after I told the owner, the runner, the owner of the show where we stayed, he's like, Jeremy, that's ridiculous. And I regretted it. It was like
Mm.
a a hotel in Vegas that does not have a casino, not a nice place. Like I literally slept on top of the covers with my clothes on because that's how bad this hotel was. So,
Wow.
Wow.
yeah. So I was like, I should have just sprung for a little bit extra and not been so careful with their money, but
Mm.
I did anyways. So
Man,
lesson
sounds like
lesson
you and
learned. So
Chris have a
Dan
lot in
or
common.
Chris, I get where you're coming from with it.
There you go. You get better safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Jeremy, I mean, what do you have going on these days? And just maybe give everyone a little brief background of
Sure.
yourself and where they can find more information about you.
Yeah, I'll give a little background. So my background is in biochemistry and I'm a recovering chiropractor. Okay.
Ah,
I
covering.
don't
Okay.
practice anymore. And so 15 years ago, when I was running the chiropractic practice, I had a massage therapist, I started podcasting. The reason I started podcasting was I knew a lot about the health and the chiropractic field because I went to school for that and never learned anything about business or marketing. So I was going to a lot of marketing and business conferences, and some of them were kind of internet marketing conferences. And at the time, we're talking like 2005, 2006,
So
right?
like smart passive income, Pat Flynn, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this conference was, I don't know if you remember Yannick Silver. He had the underground marketing conferences.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
I
yeah,
think he
yeah.
did them for like
Okay.
12 years or something.
Yep, yep.
And so I started going to his conferences, and these were kind of the people behind the scenes. They weren't like gurus or anything. They were just doing the craft. And at that time, like, internet marketing was like an actual category of stuff. Now everything is,
Yeah.
a lot of things are internet marketing. But so, anyways, I was talking to some of the early adopters of some of these different industries. And so I found podcasting, and it fit like two of my main criteria, which is I love connecting and talking to, as you guys do, founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and I love learning.
Yeah.
And so so I started podcasting probably over 15 years ago, and it had nothing to do with healthcare. It was just interviewing different founders, and I loved it. And then people found out, like at that time, most people didn't know what a podcast was. They found out that I was doing it, and they would come to me and ask for help. So that by accident turned into a separate business where I started launching and running podcasts for other companies. And I actually met my business partner, and that became Rise 25. So Rise 25, we are an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast show.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and I met my bit, so I joke around partially, but I'm mostly serious. If I look back, you know, Dan and Chris, of my relationships, like almost everything good tracks back to a podcast. Now, I
Yeah.
didn't meet my wife on a podcast. My friend Jordan Harbinger, who runs Jordan Harbinger Show, I think
Of
he's 10 million
course.
downloads a month.
He's a
He actually
legend.
met his wife through the podcast,
Okay.
actually, indirectly. But but almost every other thing, my best friends, my business partner, we are obviously meeting because of a podcast. So like so many good things have tracked back to podcasting. I'm sure you feel the
Absolutely.
same
So,
way.
so yeah, I was just going to ask Dan that he does a ton of podcasts as well. Do you think good things come from doing podcasts aside from development of your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason we're meeting with private equity next month. It's the reason for really everything that's atypical in our industry that we've experienced. I think the typical stuff we would have had either way, but the atypical stuff, which really is the foundation of who we are, is
At this point, certainly.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the key theme of anyone who podcasts while it's still different. And at some point, everyone's gonna do it, like you're saying, Dr. Jeremy, and then we'll have to zag to something else, and you're kind of already feeling that way. There's already elements of people that take themselves too seriously. Like I'm on LinkedIn multiple times a day. It's important for our industry, and it's almost cringe some of these posts. So I actually try to go, I want to be the change I want to see in the world. So I try to do the opposite, and it usually comes across as sarcastic or a meme, and it sticks out. And then if everyone was doing that, I'd probably go serious.
And in that vein, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dan. You
Yeah,
just
no.
reminded me I need to post to LinkedIn.
Oh yeah,
I
Chris. Yes, Chris is using ChatGPT to write sarcastic posts in the form of like Yoda or different voices. So it's kind of cool, like doing something different.
I mean, it's partially in someone's personality. Like people will be attracted to your personality because
Correct.
you're maybe more sarcastic and funny, and some people will be turned off. Some people will be attracted to that, right? And so I feel for me, I just try and be who I am,
Yeah,
and if people, like you say, are trying to be too buttoned up, if that's not who they are,
it's
then that's going to
not,
attract the
man.
wrong
That's
person,
the part that bothers me because we're all multifaceted. Like, sure, we have inclination. Like, my real inclination, I just want to stay home and read books. Like, that's really what I want to do. Maybe watch TV. But, like, I've learned how to be extrovert. I've learned how to, we're all
You're more
multifaceted.
introverted.
I think I'm more introverted, but the personality
He
tests show
is not.
otherwise.
He is not.
I've learned to become an E instead of an I, but I think at my core, I'm an I, like from what I remember as a kid.
Mm,
The point is,
you have a
people,
hard
you're
time
right.
convincing me.
Well, I don't need to convince you. Point is, Dr. Jeremy's right when people need to be themselves. But a lot
Yes.
of times, here's the part that bugs me. People try to be a cartoon character of themselves, like what they think they should be versus what they just are. And that's where you get overly buttoned up and just everything's politically correct post. And those are the same people that don't get traction because people can smell that out after a while. Like, yeah, well, it's just not interesting. People want to see vulnerabilities, they want to see flaws, they want to see authenticity above all else, from what I've noticed.
Yeah, it just comes into play too with I think it halts people from starting things and it's in my world, in the podcasting world, because people think they have to have everything buttoned up, it has to be
Mm,
perfect. And I was talking with a friend that runs like a social media marketing agency, and they basically market influencers. And they said the best converting videos of these is not one that was shot with like these whatever big cameras and it was polished. It was with their iPhone, shooting it quick and just doing it because it's real. And so I tell people that story a lot of times because what's halting them from starting is actually not going to get them the best results in the end, in this realm, right?
yeah,
Just
yeah,
be yourself. If it's like, you're on a Zoom and a call, it's not the best video quality of all time. I mean,
yeah,
it's fine. People don't even say anything, but they think, oh no, I need this like studio quality
yeah.
thing. And that's not the media. It depends on the medium, right? If you're producing a commercial, yes, but if you're producing a podcast that's going to go on YouTube, not so much.
Yeah, I agree. So what advice or what do you have going? Can you tell us a little bit about the economics behind Rise 25? Like the business
Yeah.
model?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is we talk about strategy. And I think this goes across like any business. So like if someone comes to us and like they say, hey, I want to start a podcast, I back up a little bit. I'm like, well, let's forget about the podcast for a second, talking about their goals. And so typically we'll start with a roadmap, right? We call it our Dream 200 roadmap, and we'll map out with what the goals are and what are the things that they need to focus in on from a podcast perspective to get the biggest and best results. And that kind of comes down to two things. One, it comes down to relationships, right? And the way I view and always viewed a podcast is how do I give as much as humanly possible to someone, meaning I can feature them on my show, right? That's one way I can give to them. And then obviously, what happens afterwards is there's a full blog post and it goes on the video channels and the audio channels. And so we map out this 6 to 12 month plan for ROI for a podcast first. All right. And we do multiple sessions. We're kind of mapping out who are the best relationships they want to give to. I kind of call it the 5 steps to profit with a podcast. Now, when I say this, Chris and Dan, I'm not talking about a comedy podcast. I'm not talking about like a true crime podcast. I'm not talking about a sports podcast. I'm really talking more like of a B2B podcast than anything. But I think this applies to any industry. These 5 steps that we talk about, is create a Dream 200. Okay. And people think of it as a Dream 200 as like, okay, ideal clients. The way I think of it is more who are also strategic partners, referral partners, who's in the ecosystem of that industry in general. And that I kind of categorize as kind of like a Dream 200. The next step will be to reach out, right? I like reaching out in a giving way, right? So like if I'm reaching out to you, Dan, it's not to ask for anything. It's like, what can I give to you? How can I help you? Maybe it's introducing you to someone. Maybe it's when you're in Chicago, oh, who other people you should meet or whatever that is. So when you have a podcast, obviously you can reach out and invite someone on. So the second step would be from an outreach perspective. Because I've had, the co-founder of Pixar, P90X, RX Bar, and all these people, and they're like, how'd you get these people on your show? Well, I mean, it was hopefully good copywriting from like an outreach perspective. But there's a lot of elements that go into the outreach. But that's the second step. First, create the list of people that you want to be in connection with. The second is outreach. The third is the art and science of producing amazing content, right? And so we go into some of those pieces of, and you probably get these questions too, both of you, which is like, what mic do you use? What software do you use? All these elements.
Mm,
But when it comes down to it, it comes to, I have found when the art and science of producing amazing content is stories. right? And so when I had the founder, I had Nolan Bushnell, who founded Atari. He founded Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E.
He was
Cheese, yeah.
Steve Jobs' mentor. So I was like, what's a cool story that I could have him tell that would be, I would love to listen to and the audience would love to listen to. And I found out through some research that Steve Jobs offered him 33% of Apple for $50,000.
Hmm.
And I wanted to know why he turned that down. I don't know if he'd be the richest person of all time with that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I was curious. And so, what are some of the stories that can be told on the show? And then the fourth one is kind of building in a give loop, which is how do you keep giving to that person? Like with the podcast, obviously, it gets produced after the conversation. This is going to get produced as an episode on all these channels. Also, I'll create snippets out of stuff like 30 to 60-second snippets, post them on social. So how does that one relationship and conversation can I turn into, ongoing loop of giving to that individual? And the fifth is, really what a company wants, which is they can't survive without making money. So how do you turn some of the relationships into partners, right? And the partners, by the way, goes both ways. It's like we refer to them and they refer to us. And people often ask me, Jeremy, how do you get so many referrals for the podcast or for the business? And I said the best way to get referral is to give referrals, right? So I probably make 5 to 20 introductions a day to people in my network, and just to be helpful. I'm not expecting necessarily anything in return. I'm just trying to be helpful. But when I'm doing that, obviously I'm top of mind. And if they think of someone, a company that, we can help, then they'll make an introduction. So that's kind of the first stage, which is to run people through a roadmap under those 5 steps. And then at the end, if it's a fit to work with that company beyond the whole strategy and we map everything out, then we are an easy button to work with them. So we will literally, they could show up, record the episode. We have a kind of a portal dashboard that our clients use. They send it to us and we do everything on the back end. So that can vary depending on, as you know, some people publish. There's lots of bells and whistles people want or don't want. So it could vary on the number of episodes, if they want video, if they want audio, how long the blog post is, the different assets created from it. So ultimately we want to be their easy button to execute this so they actually do it, because I have found huge
Yeah.
benefit in forming these relationships over the years.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the easiest hacks, if you're, especially if you're B2B, that's a business to business for those watching, is inviting someone that you want to sell to be a guest, because you're selling by just them knowing who you are. That's like the biggest barrier to sales, period, is do I know this person? Do I trust? So if you do like a 30-minute, 60-minute podcast and you guys mesh well, you have an actual relationship at that point. Plus, you did them a favor, like you're promoting them. So it makes it a lot easier to say, hey, by the way, if you ever need like a patient recruitment company, I have one. Um, they're more inclined to listen to you as opposed to just a cold email pitch. Hey, I'm the founder of this such and such, and that's going to get deleted. But imagine having a captive audience for an hour. And that's not why you're doing the pod, but it's like an indirect benefit
Yep.
of doing it that
I
people
mean, you
don't
kind of
still
said it.
underappreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it, Dan, which is like in my world in life, I like to lead with a give. And with the
Hmm.
situation of inviting someone on, you're leading with a give and featuring
Hmm.
them. And then what they don't realize, oftentimes, at least with mine, is I may publish a snippet of them in a month, in 6 months, and beyond that's going to keep
Hmm.
promoting them on social media, right? And
Yeah.
so it's leading with a give and continuing to give. And like you said, obviously they know what you do. So if they're in need or they know someone in need,
Yep.
hopefully they'll think of you.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about why people go to conferences, like especially B2B. It's to sell ultimately. And so you can do, why wait for a conference? You can just do a podcast anytime, 24/7 on their time. They could be in their pajamas for all you care, or at least from the waist down. I don't know what pants you're wearing, Jeremy, but
Well, I
could be
had this
shorts.
conversation, I had this conversation today because I was on a group call that I was leading and I kind of walked away and I'm not I don't hide the fact like I literally wear shorts.
I
Um
knew it.
I wear
I
shorts
just
if
said that,
it
but
could
I
be
didn't.
winter, then Chris like and I'm wearing shorts and it's just what I wear.
Right.
I have a standing desk and it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And if you even look at, I don't know if you guys watch Shark Tank, but if you've watched,
Yeah, we used to.
Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, if you've seen him interviewed, he's got a camera, and he's wearing a tux situation
Oh
here or
yeah.
whatever. And then
Yeah.
from the side view, he's wearing shorts. And
hmm
so he'd be interviewed on like whatever, the news on live television and they'd only see from the waist up. But
Yeah.
I'm comfortable. I work out a lot. So I come in,
That's the
yeah.
underrated aspect of doing this. It's you're doing something that's different from most. Like most of your peers are not probably not podcasting, and for all the reasons why they would say, well, why would I do that? Why are you doing that? Well, that's the exact reason why you should be doing it. And then it's convenient. I mean, literally you just demonstrated how it's very convenient for you to do what you're doing while still looking professional on a Zoom.
And I like to point out too, like some people I talk to, that's why I have the overarching kind of concept is giving to someone because let's say someone's listening, like okay, it's self-serving. Obviously, you want to do a podcast, but I say, listen, if you don't
Yeah.
want to do a podcast, that's totally cool. You don't need to do a podcast to give to someone.
Yeah.
And so if someone's listening to this, like you could just go and find someone who you really respect and you really want to have a deeper collaboration partnership with and post about them on social. That's free.
Yeah.
You don't need a podcast. There's lots of stuff you can do to give to someone, post about them on your social channels. You could text them an appreciation, just saying you appreciate them and why, right? So there's a lot of things you could do without necessarily doing a podcast per se. You know what I
So
mean?
if somebody wanted to join Rise 25, like what would they have to do? Does it cost them money? How does it work?
Yeah, so like from a Rise 25 perspective, first of all, if someone's interested in doing podcasting or relationship building, I just tell them, my podcast is inspiredinsider.com. If you search the word podcast, I have lots of free resources. Like people ask, what software do I use? What technology do I use? How do I start a B2B podcast or whatever? We give away all that stuff, right? So you can go to Inspired Insider podcast and actually search for that stuff. On the the paid engagement side, typically if you go to rise25.com and you go to the contact page if someone's interested in seeing how it works, typically a paid engagement, that roadmap, depending how long it's going to be, could be around $2,000 to $3,000. And for us to roadmap everything out, and typically at the end we can find out kind of what, from a customized proposal perspective, what they want and need. And usually what we'll do is we'll credit that um, roadmap fee to working with us if it's a fit. So if we end up obviously running their whole podcast on the back end,
Mhm.
then we'll just create a customized proposal
So is
on
it
that.
designed for like busy professionals? Like, hey, Dr. Jeremy, I don't have time for this, but I do want to do a pod, but I don't have time for that extra stuff, like cutting up my videos into shorts and, you
Totally.
know, is that like the ideal
Yeah, busy
client?
professionals and also people who run companies who literally they just want to show up and do focus on relationship building and running their company, right? So
Mhm.
they could be just busy running their company and they know they want to do more thought leadership, authority marketing, and relationship building. So, I mean, the funny thing is, we have anywhere from SaaS companies to agencies to manufacturing companies to law firms to doctors' offices. And It's those companies that want to increase authority and build more relationships, and they don't want to worry about all the minutia, you know.
Let's say Chris, my good buddy here, Chris, wanted to do his dream. Do you want to hear one of his dreams?
I want to hear it. Let's do it.
He can't find a political trustworthy source of the truth. Everything's biased too much to the left, as with mainstream media, or those loonies on the right, the alt-right with like, crazy conspiracy, which by the way, many turn out to be true. But he needs something in between. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure they exist. The internet's huge. I'm not curious enough to look, but he's looked. He couldn't find. So he said, why don't he do it? And this was years ago. So, Chris, is that like fair summary of your dream, or am I missing
Well, dream is kind of an exaggeration, but
Dream pod, if you were to
oh,
have your own pod?
sure. I approached Dan about this, I think, if I had to guess, 2000, maybe 2011.
This is your chance, Dr. Jeremy, to sell Chris right now.
And I said,
I'm the anti-salesman, so I'm probably gonna anti-sell, but go
Okay.
ahead.
so
Yeah.
I just said, I don't think there's a reputable source out there for any information in terms of news in general,
Hmm.
um, let alone politics.
It's a tough one for sure.
And the more we pull on the string, the less we actually get into news, and the more we get into philosophy. But let's say we don't go that far and you just want the news. There's still no such thing according to Chris. So would he be a good fit for Rise 25? Would he be Rise 26?
So the way I think of the podcast is for it to be sustainable, I think I put it through an ROI filter.
Okay.
So the first question I'm asking myself is how or is this going to produce ROI for Chris, right? Because Chris, you're a busy guy,
And for Chris, that's
right?
very important.
Like, so if you're going to do something, you want it to result in revenue. Like, you're not going to do it for the hell of it. Okay. And so when I think of what's the path to ROI for this? Okay.
Wait,
And
I gotta interject something
go
right
ahead, go
there.
ahead, go ahead.
So Dan and I started the channel we're on now back
Yeah.
in at the start of the pandemic, 2020. Nearly at the start, probably what, Dan, 2, 3 months in.
Nah, it was
And
like a year in, but yeah.
no, it was less than that. No?
Nah, it's
Okay.
okay.
In
Okay.
pandemic dog years,
Yeah,
feels like
Yeah,
10
yeah,
years.
yeah.
Like one
exactly.
year is equivalent to
I
five
think I was
years.
infected with COVID once by then, at that
So
point.
So
2 years of COVID is like 10
Yeah, what?
years. Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But at the time, we both lived in California and we were still on lockdown. And it's like, man, we got to have something to do. Right. So let's create a YouTube channel. Um, and initially, we went a different direction than we are now. And I would say, so what was that, Dan? You're saying it was 3 years ago we started.
Yeah, it was like July
Um,
21, around that
okay,
time.
3 years ago, I would say we just now broke even with
Ah,
the money we put out starting the
uh-huh,
channel,
uh-huh.
revenue generated. So it takes some time for sure in terms of ROI.
It depends how you're monetizing it, right? So if someone's trying to monetize it with like ad dollars, sponsor dollars, it's very difficult and it takes a much longer period of time. If someone has an actual business behind it, or sometimes I talk to people, they haven't focused the podcast on their business. It's more like a separate topic to their business.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone has a certain client lifetime value for their business and they link it up to the podcast, it's not far-fetched to actually monetize it much quicker and better and more for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into some things on this, but you know, from the clinical trials piece,
Hmm.
right? I don't know the business enough to speak to it, but
Oh, that part's doing good. It's
go
really
yeah,
our extracurricular, which would be this channel and Chris's dream channel
right.
that
I mean,
is
my
yet to be
point
born.
is with that, Dan, what I think about is how do you, it is peripheral, but like how do we create so it links up to the
Mm,
clinical trials business, because if it linked to that and you got clients out of it, then you monetize it much
yeah.
easier, right?
The problem with that though
Yeah,
is a
go
lot
ahead.
of our
Yeah,
like the whole point of this channel,
yeah,
extracurricular,
yeah,
was to have fun and do things that are not necessarily PC. Where
yeah,
in our other channel, we have to be very mindful of the audience, which are they skew left leaning. And on this channel, we have actually had people that are banned from the other side. Like we've had Dr. Peter McCullough on. I would have never put him on my other channel just because, I'd be ostracized. Although I did put clips of it. So, yeah, I break my own rules here and there. But the point was to separate the two in a way.
yeah.
But
But you do have two. One is kind
yeah,
of like, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, part of me would say, okay, I get that. And I would be like, okay, who are the ones that fit on both?
They are
Right.
those
And
people.
and
Yeah.
so I would say, like, for me, I'd be like, okay, if I had them on the other channel, and then they're like, listen, I have this other channel, like it's got some cool people, it's
Yeah.
got a cool audience. Actually, if you are offended by XYZ, you shouldn't come on this. If you aren't, I think you should come on the other channel, right? And it's just
Yeah.
another way to, and it'll be probably a
Sure.
totally different conversation, I'm sure. But it is, when I think of like ROI and monetization, if those are relationships that are driving the most revenue in a business,
Huh.
then I want to double down on those. And the content piece you can make fit into either if it's a fit, right?
There's
You
been
can't,
overlap. There
you know what
has
I
been
mean? So
overlap. Yeah.
that's how I would answer that question, which is
Yeah.
not everyone would be a fit, but I bet some people would be. And those people, if they
That's
are great
true.
partners and people for the clinical trials, I'd be like, hey, come over here. And that's also the personality, sarcastic, funny, and maybe if they fit into that, you may jive even more with them. I don't know.
Yeah. Like sometimes
You know
we
what I mean?
actually will record something and then we'll debate afterwards, me and Chris, like which channel does this
Yeah.
belong on? And
So
sometimes it's
like,
really hard to argue which channel.
I'll give an example, Chris, as we're spitballing here about your dream
Yeah, he doesn't
podcast,
seem too convinced yet.
not your dream.
Well, you're miscategorizing it as a dream to begin with.
I know.
Dream pod,
I'm only quoting Dan on this.
dream
So
No.
pod.
That's,
I think
I
that's
was
fair.
speaking directly at
okay,
Dan,
okay.
not you.
So like what I think about, again, let's take the clinical trials example. Like I always look at coupling both the the interest of whatever the content is to the guest, right? And so let's just say there's these people in the clinical trials that also believe exactly what you believe, Chris, which is like all of these sources are biased. And what I would probably do from this, so now we're talking, I'm splitting relationship piece and content piece, right?
Mhm.
From the relationship piece for me would be the same, like which people fit into the clinical trials universe that would be good partners, maybe clients. Now, the content piece is separate. So I may have those people on, and basically, I say, listen, when you come on this show, and remember, they're in the clinical trials universe. I'm using an example. When you come on this show, I want you to bring your least favorite news sources, which ones you think are the most biased. I'm making this up, right? From a content
Sure.
perspective. Which ones are the most biased news sources and why you think that? And which ones you think are least biased. And that's all we're going to talk about in the show. If that doesn't fit your thought and you don't care to talk about it, you're not a fit for the show. So I think of like, what if I had 100 guests and they all shared what they thought their least favorite. I mean, you'd probably disagree with half of them anyways, which would be a fun podcast. But
Yeah.
which would be the most biased news sources? Which
Hmm.
one do you think are the least biased news sources? And you just have a conversation. So if I look at 100 episodes, by the way, all people who maybe are in the kind of the clinical trials arena, which feed the business, so you don't have to worry about ads, sponsors, those kind of things. You could get a great amount of resources, maybe ones that you've never even heard of from and at the end of that 100 episodes, you're like, okay, maybe like 30 of those I actually agree with. And so now you have a list of 30 of the least biased. And then you could print a list of 100 of the most biased sources according to my guess and 30 of the least biased. So
It's kind of
that's
cool.
how I'd answer the question. But for me, if we're working with the show, we don't work with the show that want to monetize just strictly through media because I don't think there's a clear path to ROI there. And so I don't want to take someone's money
Hmm.
if I don't think there's a clear path to ROI for them. So unless we come up with an actual clear, that's why we do the roadmap. And also, you may totally disagree. We may do the roadmap. Let's say we do the roadmap, Dan and Chris, and you're like totally disagree with everything. Like, yeah, I could see that. You're like, yeah, but I don't, I want to just do the media part. I don't want, like, then we probably wouldn't say, hey, we're not a fit to work with you because I think the route you want to go, I don't see a clear path to ROI. And we still have people push back and say, hey, don't, Jeremy, I want to do it anyways. I know, but in 4 months, you're going to want to quit because you don't have ROI and you're paying us money. So,
I
I
see.
don't really want to start that type of relationship. So I look at linking it to ROI from a current business. And if someone doesn't have a current business, like we just talked to someone the other day and they're kind of branching out. They're just starting like in a sales consulting. And we say, hey, like we have a course. You can get the course, start there because you don't have a clear definition of what your ideal client is or your offering
Hmm.
is. So we can't really figure out the monetization. So,
It's actually like, yeah, I think it's a good service that you're providing. It's like a niche of, it's like a huge niche though, of like these B2B professionals that are experts in their domain, want to do a podcast, probably listen to podcasts, but just don't have the time. And for them, monetization's probably easier because they're in business, right? So they're going to generate more sales as opposed to someone who just wants to start a YouTube channel for the fuck of it, and then figure out monetization as you go, which is kind of what we did with this extracurricular channel. But
and sometimes, it actually just people by doing it figure out,
mm,
actually some of these relationships turned into something that
mhm,
actually allows us to continue to do this and
mhm,
spend the time and energy and money to do it all, right?
mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's why again we start with the strategy because we've learned from lots of businesses of what's kind of a tried and
Interesting.
true strategy.
Have you ever, Jeremy, how long have you been doing the Rise 25? Is it like relatively new or it's been going
No,
on?
it's the business itself is 10 years old.
Okay.
With the
That's a
business
lot of
partner. And
time.
then before that, John and I kind of came together as business partners. But before that, I was helping people, with, our team when we joined together kind of got
So,
merged.
so let me
So,
ask you,
And
because like, oh, go
I
ahead,
was
Chris.
just going to add in your oldest video, while you were talking, I was looking at your YouTube channel. Looks like it's about 4 years old, the
my
oldest
video,
video.
no,
Yeah.
on Inspired Insider.
Well, Rise 25 was where I went. Has images of you. No?
No, no, he has another older channel though
Oh,
for
you
his
do?
personal, yeah.
Yeah, Inspired Insider is where I put most of the videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
Didn't
Jeremy,
catch that.
from Rise 25, because that's the business model that I'm pretty interested in. Have you ever worked with a client? Because you work with clients, right? A bunch, like a diverse group of clients. Have you ever been so intrigued by a particular business model that you're like, maybe I should get into this for myself? Like, this is kind of cool.
That's the issue with, I think, podcasting is there are so many interesting businesses. So
Yeah,
I haven't followed through with it, but I mean, no doubt, I'm like, wow, you can actually make money
because
doing
it's
that. That's
discovery.
crazy.
Like, you're doing the process of discovery.
Yeah.
I was just
Oh,
curious.
100%. It's like I never actually I try and stay focused. We actually have a shiny
Mhm.
object board. We use ClickUp for project management. And so if we
Okay.
come up with a shiny object idea, we will put it on the shiny object board. So like, oh, Dan just gave me this great idea for like an AI that blah blah
Well, you
blah,
could start a clinical research site. I mean, we could
Right.
get into that, but that's
That
there
sounds.
are chiropractors that do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
You go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because I was curious, and we're getting closer to the end here, so I would like this question answered. But you introduced yourself as a recovering chiropractor, so I'm taking you off topic here a little bit to a tangent.
Did you get
But
injured or something?
yeah, what was that about?
No, I just don't practice anymore.
Mentally
So
recovering.
yes, so I was running two businesses, you know, and as you probably both know, it's hard to run two businesses at the same time. And so I basically made a decision and Rise 25, the chiropractic business was just kind
Flatline.
of yeah, it was just not flat and like dead, but I mean it was just
Sure.
kind of going along and steady.
Static.
And Rise 25 was like going up and to the right. And
Hmm.
so and when I thought about it, I love treating patients and I really had a passion for it, but the more I grew that business, the more I had to work.
Yeah.
Um and so I'm like, wait, and I actually wasn't always looking forward to just doubling the business. Okay. So with Rise 25, it's a little bit different. And so it just became kind of a natural evolution. It's like, okay, listen, I have to make a decision here. I
Hmm.
can't run both businesses the way it's going. And so I made a decision to really zero in and focus in on Rise 25.
Props to you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
I mean,
makes
I
sense,
linear
sir.
do,
versus hockey stick
Chris, have a
growth.
table right here for people who, right there, you can't really see it. Behind there for my family or comes in or friends possibly. But I don't see patients anymore.
Yeah, and this kind by the way, the content creation from chiropractors is wild. Like,
I binge watch like if I were
well, a
doing
lot of
it,
it's like soft porn. Have you seen it? They'll get like models
I
acting
have,
like they're their patients. They'll be like, "Oh, and then the girl's like in this totally sexual position, and the chiropractor's trying to act like it's therapy. He's like,
well,
boom, like crack.
I have not seen this. I may have to start watching.
I mean,
Yeah, the rabbit hole gets deep.
the some people are just to love that, the cracking noise with the
Crack addicts
adjustment.
was it called?
Yeah, and
Dude, the
so
guy's like just insane.
I will definitely binge watch some of those channels of just people. I've even watched there's pet ones too. I don't know if you've Dan seen those or Chris. Like
Pet
there's pe
chiropractors?
yeah, you go watch them
Holy shit.
adjusting dogs.
Haven't
It's
seen that.
crazy. Yeah.
No, I've seen
And
the Insta hoochies getting adjusted, but not the dogs.
there's they have
Huh.
actual like like they'll take a big dog and it's crazy to
Wow.
watch. And they'll hear the noise, the dog will
That
make a
shit's
grunt.
wild.
And I'm thinking the dog's gonna bite that person. But
Have
like,
we
no,
ever
they
had
just
an animal podcast yet? Like where an animal's talking or like not talking, but like barking and then a human's interviewing it?
who,
What?
me? No, I never.
No, no, but have you seen that? I haven't seen any yet. I
No,
think that's
no.
next. That's got to be next.
Where the dog is talking with AI or what?
Like Dr.
Maybe with
Doolittle kind
AI,
of thing?
I think it can be
Oh,
done.
I
Like
have
two
not seen that.
dogs.
No.
Yeah. I think that's next, man. You got to start thinking with AI, all this stuff. It's gonna be insane. Like the content creation. Did you hear about there's this tool that scours the internet pre-AI. So because AI has flooded our content, like there are specific search engines or tools, I guess plugins, that will eliminate any AI generated content. Just to go pre-AI content. Like because it's if not already, very soon the majority of content will be AI generated.
Mm.
It's sad actually if you think about it. I mean, and I tend to be an optimist, but now I could spot a LinkedIn AI generated article from a mile away and the people think they're being slick and I'm like, dude, this they all start the same. When I do mine, I try to humanize it to the point where it no longer even makes sense. Just try to make it look human. But there's some people that just copy and paste and they're done and it's not what they think it looks like at this point. Like people will catch on pretty soon.
Oh, totally.
It
Now
just
you have
becomes
me
spam at some point.
now you have me thinking though, Chris, like what do you feel like the least biased sites out there? I'm gonna have to
Let's go, Chris. This is your
Well,
chance to
so
shine,
if you
man.
want to, if you, so first off, if you want to circle back to that, what you were describing or prescribing,
yeah,
as far as linking it to the content Dan has on his channel,
yeah.
we would both be ostracized, just FYI.
I don't think so.
I
Robert
do.
Goldman, Rod Raphael, there's a lot like them.
Robert won't come on for fear of being
No,
ostracized.
Robert has come on, and Jeremy said we
Eh,
just invite them. Like, so it's like their safe space to
You mean
talk.
you would be ostracized, or the person you have on would be ostracized?
both. There would be a
Both.
they would
It's
be
very
feared.
possible. I mean, listen, I'm
Both.
sure people would disagree with them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they'd have to be okay with people disagreeing with it. But I agree. It's like if someone says this is the most biased and someone else that's their favorite news site, that'll
Right.
Yeah.
probably piss them off,
That would be
right?
more fair because you're having both, and you could be like the neutral person and not
There's have you
picking a
seen
side.
But
the Chris, have you seen the YouTube channel? I think it's called Jubilee.
I believe I have watched it.
You
I definitely know the channel. I
So it's like basically kind of like what you're saying, Dan, about taking like whatever Trump versus Harris supporters
Mhm.
or and they basically have these people and kind of I don't know if they're debating each other. There's plastic surgery versus natural beauty. There's our, pro-gun versus anti-gun. And so they
Ooh,
take the two opposite sides and they basically talk about they bring up these questions. It's really interesting, but
that's
yeah,
cool.
so maybe it's the two people who would ostracize each other are on talking about it. I don't know.
I'd be down.
I'm certain I've watched this channel you're
Have you seen? I'm
describing.
sure you've seen it.
Let's
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
make it
sure I
happen,
have too.
Chris. Make dreams come true, man.
So, but I'm talking about the ostracize, like, yeah, maybe they just argue with each other in person instead of like behind the scenes being, I totally
I
disagree
think
with
people
everything that person
respect
said.
as long as we don't touch our core topic of research on this other channel. I think people don't care. And
I still disagree.
it's not like they're gonna find
It's
it. We're not gonna advertise it on there anyways.
Well, the problem is if you're taking people from your channel and putting them, blasting them on this other channel, eventually it's going to get out because they're either going
yeah.
to mention it,
Hmm.
hey, go check out me on this other channel to
Yeah, and then
others,
they
and then the
question me,
word gets
yeah.
out.
On my other channels, my extracurricular, and fuck off if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, what do
I
you want
mean,
from me?
my caveat was I never said if someone would be ostracized or wouldn't be ostracized. I just said
No, this
all
is
I
true.
said was
This is true. I'm just saying it would
what
be potentially
what would
problematic.
produce ROI?
There you
The
go. I like
ostracizing
ROI.
is a
Fuck the
separate
ostracize.
topic,
Yeah.
which, maybe a hindrance of doing it, right?
Right. No,
But
fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah, yeah. But
Respect.
I don't
Respect.
disagree with that at all. I mean, people are very passionate about their news sources in one way or the other,
Oh,
Yeah.
certainly.
So, yeah.
And I would be arguing with them all, so Dan would have to
Well,
have to do
that's
it
what
himself.
makes that's
A
actually
fucking
what makes a
headache.
good show. Like I almost feel like if someone would be ostracized from the show, they'll probably pick up steam. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
And what if
Like
someone
people want
argues so bad that we permanently ban them from the channel
people,
and say, you've been ostracized.
yeah.
Get out.
But there's a guy, I don't know if you've seen what's his CoffeeZilla. Have you seen his stuff?
Yes. Yes.
That I haven't.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. He's kind of sharing, I don't know, Dan, you could say news sources and like um actual research on some of these programs that people run, maybe like online programs that claim
Yeah.
they can help people make money or
Or
whatever.
he'll like
So,
basically call out like gurus, right? Like if that's the guy I'm thinking of,
yes, this is exactly who
he
you're
did a
thinking
hit
about.
piece on basically everyone. It's kind of like riding the momentum of other people, but and people love watching a car wreck. Like I think that's kind of what it is, and they all do it because he did one on Graham Stephan, and then Graham Stephan got famous kind of by doing it to Grant Cardone. Um,
Yeah.
it's
He's
interesting to
got
me.
3.76 million subscribers
Yeah,
on his
yeah,
YouTube, but like he points, people love watching it because he's kind
yeah.
of sharing some
That's
of the
where it gets.
research, right?
That's where it gets to philosophy for me. I wouldn't tear someone down, and make that my foundation. Although he dresses it up as, you know, protecting others, like he's some vigilante.
Well, I think I don't remember his story if he got scammed or
Yeah,
something. And then
probably. Yeah.
this is kind of what started him down this path. My point is like it's a bit controversial because like
Yeah,
you are quote unquote exposing different people who
yeah,
get pissed off,
yeah, yeah.
right?
But back to your number one point though, of like, do you have lasting power to do this? Like, you have to, at some point as a creator, want to continue doing it despite no one watching in the beginning. And to me,
Yeah.
personally, I couldn't do that. It's not intellectually engaging enough, or I would just feel slimy. Why am I tearing this guy down if I actually watch his videos? But I could
I
see
think
how why it's
like he probably
successful.
has a personal, I mean, it seemed like he has a personal mission because he got scammed that he
Yeah,
had to do it.
yeah,
But like for
yeah.
you, you don't have that, and I wouldn't have that
Yeah.
passion
Teach his own
to
though.
do it.
The thing, what's crazy is like I think I heard this from Gary V. I mean, he's the reason I got started back in '09. I read to Crush It. Um, he said we're the first. If you think about it, it's wild. We're gonna be the patriarchs of our families. Generations from now, in the year 3000, they're gonna look through the archives and try to find like their most ancient relatives, and because of all this digital media, and we're the first generation, they're gonna find us. They're gonna say, "Hey, that's my great 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 grandfather."
It's
So,
out on the internet.
but
Yeah.
to me, I'm mindful about that. I know culture is gonna change by then, but I think certain principles remain true despite the changing of the millennia. I think about shit like that, and Chris probably does too,
Mm,
or
So,
maybe
Chris,
not.
on this show, do you share some of your favorite news sources or least favorite, or no? Or do you feel like you
no,
get ostracized?
no, I'm not fearful of being ostracized. As I
Okay.
had mentioned, we had one individual that has a platform and is fairly well known in the industry.
Robert
Uh,
Goldman, shout
yeah,
out.
we have a video on the channel, and he was really concerned that people in our industry would see it. I was like, dude, trust me, nobody from our industry is watching this channel. Um, it,
Yet.
I had to very much reassure him, right? Um, so, and he was still very skeptical, but even after much reassurance.
Yeah, he
But
needed 3 shots of tequila just to get on.
yeah, exactly. I mean, almost exactly. So, no, but the topics never really came up. Um, in terms of what do I consider, I don't consider any MSM reliable personally.
That's what I was
Um,
saying. Like everything has got to have some bias to it, I imagine. Right?
well,
I mean,
even your local news does at this point. So,
yeah.
if it bleeds, it leads. Well, is that really
Yeah.
news? Do I need to see this dead person on the freeway? It's just a bias, right? It's a bias for entertainment, um, and dollars, advertising dollars. So,
ROI, baby. Jeremy said it best.
yeah, but it's all based on that, opposed to what's real, right? What's reality? What's true?
Right. I
So,
told you this gets to philosophy.
and in terms of me caring, I can care less. I don't care who I offend, honestly. I speak my mind. You don't like it, don't deal with me.
It goes with your t-shirt there.
Grumpy day.
That it does.
Well, you're welcome to stay on, Jeremy. I would love to do more with you, but we have in 2 minutes a philosophical debate if you want to stay on. You'll
I don't know
probably
what
join
that.
my team.
It'll
I
run
don't
an
know.
hour.
What's that?
It'll run
This
an hour.
conversation is going to run an hour.
Oh, okay. No,
It's
It's
I was
up
up
to
to
gonna
you,
you.
say
man.
I have another call in probably 15 minutes, so I don't
Okay,
want to
okay.
interrupt the flow
We're
of
gonna have to do
everything
a
for you.
part
So,
two because we
but
have to like dissect, you know, starting a pod from scratch. This was a really good fun episode, and I do think there's a lot more under the surface, so we'll definitely have to do a part two very soon.
no, I appreciate you both having me.
No, thank you very much for being
Thank
on.
you so much.
Had a
Thank you,
good time.
Jeremy.
All right.
Lots of good information. You have a good rest of
Everybody
the
go
day,
connect with Jeremy.
and we will
Thanks,
let you
guys.
know when we're in. No obligation, but we'll let you know
Yeah,
when we're
I'll
in
send you an
Chicago.
email.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good
Have a
one.
good
Thanks,
one.
guys.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.